Hello, my name is Mark, and today I have something special for you guys. Today, we're going to be going over the reading comprehension for the IBEW Aptitude test. This is practice passage number 1. Before I start this video, make sure you like this video so more people just like you could get free content to take their test. Okay. So let's just go over a few things also as well. So the reading comprehension test, you will have 51 minutes to complete 36 questions. You will have about 1 minute and 25 seconds per question, but that includes reading the passages too. So it's going to be less time than 1 minute and 25 seconds. There is no penalty for guessing, so I recommend you answer all of the questions. Not even a recommendation. You should answer all of the questions. So let's say you don't know something and you skip it, and at the end of the test you have maybe 5 questions that you skipped and you only have 10 seconds left for the test. Just choose C or just stick with the letter and run with it. Okay? I would choose C or B. Just make sure you answer all of the questions. Again, there is no penalty for guessing. There is no public information to how many passages are on the official test. The goal is to practice how to attack any passage they put in front of you. And all the information that I'm providing you is for educational purposes only. Okay? All this is unofficial, and this is how I would attack the passages on the reading portion, the reading comprehension portion of the test. Okay, so let's go over briefly of the types of reading comprehension questions. You will have main idea, direct detail, traps, cause and effect, inference, vocabulary in context, author's purpose, and best supported statement. And here's a little bit of more about the questions to the right side. So go ahead and take some time to read this, pause the video so you can get an idea of what to expect on the test. All right, so let's really get started. I'm going to move this over here to the right and to the left. I do have a passage for you. I've created this specifically for you. This passage will take about 6 to 8 minutes to read in your head. It will take me maybe about 10 minutes to read it out loud. And while I'm reading it out loud, I want you to silently read it in your head the way that I am reading it, because this will make you better understand what you are reading, right? I don't want you to just be reading words. I want you to figure out what is actually going on, what you are reading. So while I'm reading, I was always taught to ask the questions who, what, where, when, and why. You know, what's this about? Why is this happening? Who's Elena Cruz, right? I want you to ask yourself these questions while you are reading. Back in language arts, AP language arts, one of my teachers taught me to annotate while I read. So lots of my books in the home, they got pen marks and highlighter marks all over them because I'm always thinking. I'm always actively reading. That's what they call it. So to the left, we have the passage. To the right, we will have the questions. And this is exactly how the test will look like. Something just like this, except, no PowerPoint stuff, none of this stuff on the top. It's going to be passage to the left, of which you could scroll through. I think when you do it, you're going to be able to scroll up and down, not left to right like I'm going to be doing. And your questions, you're going to be scrolling through them too as well, while you have the passage to the left. So you will be able to look for the answers while you're answering the questions. You don't have to keep scrolling all the way up and then having to go all the way down to the answers. I don't think they would do that to you. In this slide deck, I do have the answers on the next slide of each question. So make sure to screenshot those while you are taking the test or while you're watching this video. This will just help you for later on while you're studying on your own. So let's just go ahead and begin. I'm going to read the passage, and you could skip on to the questions if you like, but I recommend that you don't so you can hear exactly how I am reading the passage. All right, let's begin. A city's recycling problem. When the city of Riverton first expanded its recycling program, officials expected the results to be straightforward. More blue bins on the curb would mean less trash in the landfill. During the first quarter of the program, the numbers seemed to support that belief. The amount of material collected from households nearly doubled, and residents proudly posted pictures of overflowing recycling carts on neighborhood message boards. To many people, a full blue bin became a sign that they were doing their part. By the end of the year, however, the city's recycling manager, Elena Cruz, noticed a problem. Although Riverton was collecting more material than before, less of it was actually being sold to manufacturers and turned into new products. At the sorting facility, workers were pulling out greasy pizza boxes, plastic shopping bags, garden hoses, food-covered containers, broken toys, and even small appliances. Residents had not stopped caring about recycling. In many cases, they cared so much that they placed almost anything with a plastic, paper, or metal surface into the blue bin, hoping it could be recycled. Elena described the problem as adulteration, a term used when a material is weakened or made impure by the presence of something that does not belong. In recycling, adulteration does not always come from carelessness. Sometimes it happens because a person is trying to help but does not understand the limits of the local system. A cardboard box with a small amount of tape might pass through the facility without issue. A cardboard box soaked with oil, however, can spread grease onto clean paper and lower the value of the entire batch. A plastic water bottle may be accepted if it is empty, but a bottle half filled with soda can leak onto paper and cardboard, making them harder to process. The sorting facility was more complex than most residents imagined. After trucks dropped off the material, it moved along a series of conveyor belts. Large screens separated flat paper and cardboard from rounder containers. Magnets pulled out steel cans. Another machine used electrical currents to push aluminum away from other materials. Optical scanners identified certain plastics by the way they reflected light. Finally, workers stood near the lines to remove items the machines missed. Although the system was efficient, it could not correct every mistake made at the curb. Plastic bags could wrap around spinning parts and force workers to shut down the line. Loose wires and hoses could do the same. Small pieces of broken glass could hide inside paper, creating safety problems and making the paper less valuable to buyers. One of Riverton's biggest challenges was teaching residents that recyclable and accepted in your curbside bin did not always mean the same thing. Plastic shopping bags, for example, could sometimes be recycled at grocery store drop-off locations, but Riverton's curbside program did not accept them. Certain plastic containers had recycling symbols on the bottom, but the city only accepted the types that local buyers were willing to purchase. Even glass, which many residents assume was always valuable, depended on transportation costs and whether a nearby processor could handle it. A material could be technically recyclable and still be rejected by a local program if collecting, sorting, cleaning, and selling it cost more than the material was worth. At first, city leaders responded by telling people to recycle more carefully. The message was well-intentioned, but it did not change much because it was too vague. Residents wanted to do the right thing, but they still had questions. Should lids stay on bottles? Were shiny frozen food boxes paper or plastic? Did a peanut butter jar need to be spotless? Could shredded paper go in the bin? The city realized that many residents were not ignoring the rules. They had never been taught the rules clearly in the first place. After reviewing the facility reports, Riverton changed its campaign. Instead of using the old slogan, "Recycle More," the city introduced a new one, "Recycle Right." Mailers, short videos, and signs on collection trucks repeated 4 basic instructions: empty, clean, dry, and accepted locally. The city explained that containers did not have to be perfectly washed, but they should not contain food or liquid. It asked residents to keep plastic bags out of curbside bins and return them to approved drop-off locations if available. It also treated a simple online search tool where people could type in an item and see whether it belonged in recycling, trash, compost, or a special drop-off category. Within 6 months of the new campaign, Riverton collected slightly less material than it had during the first year of the expanded program, but more of that material could actually be used. The blue bins were not always full, yet the bales of paper, cardboard, metal, and plastic leaving the facility were cleaner and more valuable. Elena considered that a success. The goal, she reminded the city council, was not to make recycling bins overflow. The goal was to keep useful materials in circulation. Riverton's experience showed that recycling is not only a matter of good intentions, it depends on knowledge, local rules, and the ability of the system to handle what people place inside it. Recycling can reduce waste, but only when the right materials enter the right stream. In some cases, buying less, reusing what still works, or repairing an item may help more than placing it in a bin and hoping for the best. All right, we're done. And to be honest, that took, 6 to 8 minutes? Definitely not 10 minutes. So from here on, after reading this, now we go on to the questions. So let's just go ahead and start answering the questions. Which of the following best states the main idea of the passage? A. Riverton's recycling program failed because residents stopped caring about recycling. And no, I think that is false. They do care about recycling. They just over-recycled, right? They threw everything in the blue bin. Recycling programs are most successful when residents recycle as much material as possible. And that is also false because the residents at Riverton recycled too much, that most of the items that were put into the blue bins were not recyclable at all. C says recycling is effective only when residents understand local rules and place the correct materials in the correct stream. And that, I am leaning towards this one being my answer. So let's just go ahead with D and see if this one is true or false. Riverton improved its recycling program by purchasing newer sorting machines and hiring more workers. And this one, I didn't even read this. This was not included in the passage. So from this leans more to what the main idea of the passage is. And if we go back to the very beginning, usually the main idea of the passage would be in the first part of the passage, the first paragraph, or at least like the first page. So let's just go ahead and read some of it to just make this claim that recycling is effective only when residents understand local rules and place the correct materials in the correct stream. So when the city of Riverton first expanded its recycling program, officials expected the results to be straightforward. More blue bins on the curb would mean less trash in the landfill. During the first quarter of the program, the numbers seemed to support that belief. The amount of material collected from households nearly doubled, and residents proudly posted pictures of overflowing recycling carts on neighborhood message boards. To many people, a full blue bin became a sign that they were doing their part. Okay, I think we would find the answer here, though. By the end of the first year, however, the city's recycling manager, Elena Cruz, noticed a problem. Although Riverton was collecting more material than before, less of it was actually being sold to manufacturers and turned into new products. At the sorting facility, workers were pulling out all these items, right? And then residents had not stopped caring about recycling. In many cases, they cared so much that they placed almost anything in the blue bin, hoping it could be recycled. So that's a big clue right there. And it's not that the residents, they just stopped recycling, or they didn't stop caring about recycling. They just put everything in there thinking that, well, it's going to be recycled anyway. But no, that's not the case. It's only effective when residents understand the local rules, of which we start reading that, we start reading more into the passage that this claim is true. So let's just go see the answer. This one is pretty straightforward. I don't know why I over-explained. So usually the main idea, you just have to test which ones are false, right? Because like this one right here, you for sure know that it's not going to be D. You're not going to choose D because you didn't even read about newer sorting machines. We did read about the machines and how they work and what we learned about the process, right? And the machines do play a role in the process of recycling, but nowhere in the passage did we see newer sorting machines and hiring more workers. So we could just go ahead and X that out. Recycling programs are most successful when residents recycle as much material as possible. Well, no. We found that this was the problem, that residents were recycling everything or putting everything into the recycling bin. Riverton's recycling program failed because residents stopped caring about recycle. And that was also here in the first page. Residents had not stopped caring about recycling. So this one was false. So that only leaves us with C. Again, I feel like I'm over-explaining myself. The main idea is here. You just gonna kind of have to look for it, or not kind of have to look for it. You kind of have to know that just from reading the passage. So let's go ahead and go on to question number 2. According to the passage, which of the following is one example of adulteration in Riverton's recycling system? So this one, if you notice, and this will be on the test, that adulteration was in boldface. The test makers do this on purpose. So you should be paying attention to that word and the way it's being used by analyzing the words around it, right? This one, adulteration, the definition is in the passage. So it says here, Elena described the problem as adulteration, a term used when a material is weakened or made impure by the presence of something that does not belong. So in recycling, adulteration does not always come from carelessness. So who cares about that? We're just going to highlight this, and this is what we're going to focus on. It's word for word. Material is weakened or made impure by the presence of something that does not belong. And what's an example of that? So if we keep going on in this passage where this paragraph starts, it says here, a cardboard box soaked with oil, however, can spread grease onto clean paper and lower the value of the entire batch. So we got the definition of it. So what I'm trying to tell you after that whole spiel was just all you have to do for this question, which is a direct detail question, all you have to do is find the word in boldface, find the definition by looking at the words around it, and then find an example which will also be in the paragraph or should be in the paragraph. It should be nearby. So the correct answer here would be C, a pizza box soaked with oil spreading grease onto clean paper. Moving on to question 3. According to the passage, plastic shopping bags in Riverton are, so this one is a trap detail question, because it looks like a direct detail question, but it is designed to test whether you catch the full sentence instead of grabbing one familiar word. So let's just go ahead and go over the answer choices. According to the passage, plastic shopping bags in Riverton are accepted in curbside recycling bins if they are clean and dry. This could be right. That could be right. But the thing is, we have to zoom out a little bit to see if it's all correct, right? Maybe one of these answer choices will have more, right? We want to find the answer choice that is supported the most. That's why these could be trap questions. Recyclable in some drop-off locations, but not accepted in Riverton's curbside program. The most valuable plastic item collected by the city. So I did not read this one, or did I read this one? If I did read this one, then the thing is, this could be true. However, I don't think that it is the most supported in this question. So what I would do actually And let me just read this. Accepted only when they are placed inside cardboard boxes. What I would do for this, for any of these questions, is just to go over to the section where they talk about it, right? I think it's right here. One of Riverton's biggest challenges was teaching residents that recyclable and accepted in your curbside bin did not always mean the same thing. Right here. Here we go. Plastic shopping bags, for example, could sometimes be recycled at grocery store drop-off locations, but Riverton curbside program did not accept them. Certain plastic containers had recycling symbols on the bottom, but the city only accepted the types that local buyers were willing to purchase. So just from here, just from reading this part right here, plastic shopping bags, for example, could sometimes be recycled at grocery store drop-off locations, but Riverton's curbside program did not accept them. That's your answer. And that would be right here. Recyclable. So plastic shopping bags are recyclable in some drop-off locations, right? But not accepted in Riverton's curbside program. This is word for word in the passage. So I would choose B. And in fact, it is B. Okay, it could be accepted in curbside recycling bins if they are clean and dry, because this is sort of true, right? It could be the most valuable plastic item collected by the city. I don't know if this is in the passage, but if it was, it could be sort of true. But the most supported, truest statement is B. And it's word for word in the passage. All right, question number 4. Why did Riverton change its recycling campaign from recycle more to recycle right? The city wanted residents to place more items in the blue bins. The sorting facility had stopped accepting paper and cardboard. The city realized that many residents wanted to recycle correctly, but did not clearly understand the rules. Elena Cruz wanted to replace the city's recycling program with a composting program. Nowhere did I read this one, right? I don't think so. So I would eliminate that in my head. This is a cause and effect type of question, right? What caused Riverton to change its campaign? And again, what I would do is go to the part where it's even in boldface. Recycle more and recycle right? Because these are indicators that these are part of the questions. This will be the exact format of the test, what I believe, okay? At least this part, okay? Where they have the word boldface. So don't quote me on these parts. But I only did that just so we could easily identify where to look when we're answering these questions, right? So let's just go briefly read this one over and see what is most supported in the answer choices. After reviewing the facility reports, Riverton changed its campaign. Instead of using the old slogan, recycle more, the city introduced a new one, recycle right. Mailers, short videos, and signs on collection trucks repeated 4 basic instructions. So from here, they repeated instructions, right? Empty, clean, dry, and accepted locally. And I believe the rest of the passage is just telling us that the residents of Riverton were educated, because the residents just thought, just throw it in the bin, it's going to get recycled anyway at the plant. But what they don't know is that there's a whole process to recycling. And the goal was to educate, right? The whole passage was telling us that Riverton went from the whole thing, right? It's a whole passage of cause and effect. It went from Riverton recycling everything to Riverton recycling efficiently. I hope I'm not butchering this, but this is where I would look for the answer. Okay, this is a cause and effect question. You're looking for, the question is asking what caused Riverton to change its campaign. And the most important line is the city realized, let me look for this. I have it in my notes here, but the important line is the city realized that many residents were not ignoring the rules. They had never been taught the rules clearly in the first place. And that's exactly what I said. Okay, they didn't know how to recycle in the very beginning, and then then the city gave them the rules, and they figured out how to recycle efficiently. And from the answer choices here, let's see. We have A, the city wanted residents to place more items in the blue bins. That's incorrect. They actually wanted the residents to put less items in the blue bins. The sorting facility had stopped accepting paper and cardboard. Nowhere in the passage did they say this. We can X that out. The city realized that many residents wanted to recycle, yes, correctly, but did not clearly understand the rules. And this was the recycling campaign, right? This is the reason why they changed the recycling campaign to recycle more, to recycle right. And also D, the composting program. Nowhere in this passage did they mention the composting program. So I would choose answer choice C. And that is the correct answer. So let's go ahead and go to question 5. What can be inferred from the passage about local recycling programs? Now, this question is an inference question. It's asking, what reasonable conclusion can I make based on what the passage tells me? Okay, I did put the word inferred, and this most likely will be on the test. And it's not just in the IBEW. I've seen it in the SATs, the ACTs. I've seen it everywhere. Inferred. Okay, that's a word that you're going to have to know. Okay, and the goal is to find supporting details to make the conclusion true, to make one of these answer choices true. So let's go ahead and go over them. Every city accepts the same materials in its recycling bins. I don't think that's correct. I don't think there's enough supporting details to make this conclusion. Local recycling rules can vary depending on facilities, buyers, transportation costs, and processing options. So this possibly could be true. I'm leaning on B because there is many supporting evidences. Like that's the whole thing, right, of this passage. Okay? Recycling rules can vary depending on facilities, buyers, transportation costs. This was word for word in the first, I think right here. The amount of material collected from households nearly doubled. No, that's not it. Right here. Although Riverton was collecting more materials than before, less of it was actually being sold to manufacturers and turned into new products. So right here, less of it was actually being sold to manufacturers. So we know from this sentence, it could support that there are recycling rules. I know there's more. There's a lot more to support this. And let's just go ahead with the other answer choice. Recycling programs are successful only when residents fill their blue bins every week. That is sort of true. But the thing is, that's not the main. This has like a half truth to it, right? Because yes, they want residents to fill up their bins, but one, they don't want them to be full, and they want them to be efficient, right? We actually want, most likely, right? If I was a resident at Riverton, I would want to have my blue bin filled with items that could be recycled, right? So I would actually rule this one out. Recycling programs are successful only. It's saying only when residents fill their blue bins. So it's like nothing else matters. Only filling up blue bins matter, and that's incorrect. Most recycling programs reject aluminum because it is difficult to separate from other materials. And actually, this is incorrect because there is a machine, right? There is a machine that a magnet, right? Magnets pulled out steel cans, and this renders false. So the most supported answer choice here is local recycling rules can vary depending on facilities, buyers, transportation costs, and processing options. All right, perfect. I think that's the answer, and that is definitely the answer. So let's go ahead and go on to question number 6. In the passage, the word adulteration most nearly means, let's just go over them really quick, the process of sorting recyclable items by shape and weight, the act of increasing the amount of material collected from households, the reuse of old materials to create new products, and D, the weakening or impurity of a material caused by something that does not belong. So this one is a vocabulary and context question, and just from reading this, doesn't one answer choice sound very familiar because I've repeated it several times? And if we go back to the word where adulteration was used, we can see here that I have it highlighted. Material is weakened or made, let me start from the beginning. A term used when a material is weakened or made impure by the presence of something that does not belong. And that is word for answer choice D. In the passage, the word adulteration most nearly means the weakening or impurity of a material caused by something that does not belong. And that's it. That is answer choice D, and that is the correct answer. Question 7. This is a author's purpose question. So what we're doing is getting like the answer choice that we're going to pick is a summary of the whole passage. I hope I'm right there before I read the answer choices. So let me just go ahead and read the question before I make that claim. Why does the author describe the sorting facility in detail? And I was incorrect. Okay. But this is still an author's purpose question because it is talking about describing the sorting facility, right? The main point of this question is the sorting facility. And if we go to the part where the author did talk about the sorting facility, and here we go, the sorting facility was more complex than most residents imagined. So let's go read over the answer choices. To suggest that Riverton's facility was poorly designed and needed to be replaced. And I don't think so. Reading this, I think from this, it was telling us how meticulous it was, the whole sorting facility process. And if anything were to mess up, right, if there was a mistake in the process, that could ruin a whole batch of items, which where we use the word adulteration happens, right? So let's just go ahead and go back to the answer choices. Why does the author describe the sorting facility in detail? And I don't think it is to suggest that the Riverton's facility was poorly designed and needed to be replaced. We could go ahead and eliminate that answer choice. To show that recycling workers were responsible for most of the city's recycling problems. And again, I don't think so. There was a little mention of the workers. So to prove that the machines can sort any material as long as residents place it in the blue bin. To prove that the machines can sort any material as long as the residents place it in the blue bin. This could be true, right? But the most supported, and I just read over it, to explain why incorrect items in the recycling bin can disrupt the recycling process. So again, this is about the sorting facility, okay? This is where I would look for the answer. And this claim right here to explain why incorrect items in the recycling bin can disrupt the recycling process, this exactly tells us that, right? At the very end here. Although the system was efficient, right, it could not correct every mistake made at the curb. Plastic bags could wrap around spinning parts and force workers to shut down the line. Loose wires and hoses could do the same. Small pieces of broken glass could hide inside paper, creating safety problems and making the paper less valuable to buyers. This right here tells us, right, why incorrect items in the recycling bin can disrupt the recycling process. And it gives us, this one has more, I don't know how to say it professionally, but it has like more pull compared to the other answer choices. So first, they tell us about the sorting facility, right, in detail. So we disregard this part because it's already being assumed in the question. We're being told that the sorting facility is being talked about in detail, described in detail. And then we have this part telling us what happens when incorrect items are placed in the process. So this actually is the way to break down this question and to get the answer choice D. And that's correct. So let's go ahead and go on to question 8. Which of the following statements is best supported by the passage? Riverton's new campaign improved the recycling program, even though the city collected slightly less material. Just from reading that, I believe this is the answer. Riverton's recycling program failed because residents refused to follow the rules. Well, nowhere in the passage did it say that residents refused to follow the rules, so I would eliminate that answer choice. Riverton's new campaign succeeded because the city collected more recyclable material than it had during the first year. Maybe somewhere in here, they did collect more recyclable material than it had during the first year, but the campaign wasn't successful because of that. The campaign was successful because the residents of Riverton were educated on the process. So I would eliminate answer choice C. And we have Riverton solved its recycling program by removing plastic, glass, and cardboard from the curbside program. This is completely false. I would take this one out. That just doesn't make sense. So just from reading this, I can assume that it's A. Riverton's new campaign improved the recycling program, right? So their campaign switched from recycle more to recycle right, and that their campaign improved the recycling program because now the Riverton residents are educated on how to recycle. And in turn, they did collect less material because of the way that these residents were educated, right? Not everything could go inside the recycling bin. And that is going to be answer choice A, and that's correct. And this type of question is the best supported statement question. The question is asking which answer choice is proven by the passage, which statement has the strongest support from the text. And the key sentence here, this is what I have in my notes. The key sentence here is within 6 months of the new campaign. Let's go find that. And I believe that's at the end. Right here. Within 6 months of the new campaign, Riverton collected slightly less material. So this is word for word, slightly less material than it had during the first year of the expanded program, but more of the material could actually be used. This is word for word, verbatim, this answer choice right here. Okay. And one thing I do want to add is you have to look for the answers in the passage. Most likely, the answers will be word for word in the passage. And that comes from people that took the test, from the feedback that I received, and from what I remember too as well. The reading comprehension portion was a little bit difficult just because I believe in my case, it was just time. So, when that timer is going down, that creates stress. And that stress, follows through on the test, and then everything just becomes harder. But now you won't have that stress because you are armed with knowledge. You are armed with the types of questions you will encounter. You have the main idea questions, direct detail. I don't want to read over it. You're going to have these types of questions, and you're going to have these types of questions here, right? Worded exactly like this. Okay? They're going to be just like this, very similar. Okay? You're going to prove each answer choice, and you're going to ask yourself which is more supported. So that's all I have for you guys. All right? I will create practice passage number 2. This one was an easy one, and I designed it to be an easy one. So go ahead and type practice passage 2 and what local you are applying to if you want me to create another reading comprehension passage, a practice passage. Make sure to check out my whole playlist of videos that will help you pass the math and reading comprehension portion of the IBEW aptitude test. And make sure you check out my gaming content too, because your boy plays video games. Markyfbaby out. Bye.